pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof? Seeing none. Approval of minutes from the May 15th FSP meeting, moved by Councillor Burke, seconded by Mayor Jaworski. All those in favor? Carried. Making in his honored guests to read. Max, I won't require that you stand up to hear your citation.
It's pretty long, so you should stay seated. Thank you. It's my pleasure to read this tribute to Dr. Blau. On behalf of community, acknowledge and thank Dr. Max Blau, who, as everyone is retiring after 10 successful years as President and Vice Chancellor at Wilfrid Laurier University. Dr. Blau joined Laurier on September 1st, 2007, after a distinguished career at the University of Northern British Columbia, UNBC, and many years of teaching at born and Canadian citizen in 1963. He holds a Bachelor and Master of Science degrees in zoology from the University of Manitoba and a PhD in biology from the University of New Brunswick. He began his career as a biologist in the Department of Fisheries and Oceans in Winnipeg and went on to teach biology at St. Francis Xavier University and zoology at the University of British Columbia before joining UNBC in 1995 as a professor of biology. 2 years later, he joined the university's administration as the Associate Vice President and Dean of Graduate Studies. Became one of the most research-intensive small universities in Canada. In 2005, Dr. Blau received the Science and Technology Champion Award from the BC Innovation Council in recognition of his leadership. In 2009, UNBC renamed the Quesnel former Federal Fisheries Research Station transferred to the university. It's a bit of a tongue twister. Dr. Blau has been active on the provincial and national post-secondary education scene. He completed a 2-year term as the chair of the Council of Universities in 2015 and a term as past chair in 2016. He is currently chair of the expert panel charged to assess the industrial in Canada. Dr. Blau is involved boards to Industry Canada and was a member of the Recovery Awards, which recognize the province's finest senior researchers. He also served as chair of NSERC and joined headed in comprehensive that has fully embraced its multi-campus structure. Dr. Blau has encouraged Laurier's strong focus on student experience and academic excellence and has focused efforts to increase research activity, which has more than doubled since 2000. Additionally, Laurier has recently been recognized by Maclean's as being #1 in Canada for student satisfaction in Canada, by LinkedIn as #1 for volunteerism among faculty, staff, and students in the world, and also as Canada's most efficient research university by Research InfoSource, and as having the top career services model in Canada by CIRIC. Dr. Blau has also been a champion for community engagement across the operational teaching and research or explorations like the Northdale WCI Community Hub, Dr. Blau has always envisioned greater linkages between town and gown, campus and community. He has also been an advocate of creating strong international partnerships that and our community. Of Dr. Blau's, and who joins us today in council chambers. Dr. Peng is a renowned pioneer in forging educational partnerships between Canada and China, including Laurier. Annually, a number of students graduating from one of Dr. Peng's come to Laurier to that you and your wife Lynn plan to continue to call our region home. Congratulations on a great career.
You know, Max, certainly in the tradition I witnessed last week in the Chancellor's lunch, when you cared for it either.
Absolutely true. Thank you, Councillor Henry. Thank you, Your Worship, councillors. What an honor. I feel so privileged that A, I was able to serve the university and the wider community, and B, to connect the institution and our community increasingly in an international context. Therefore, I'm so delighted that Dr. Pang and his family, he's here with his wife, 2 children, and a number of other persons from his schools. He will be opening his 28th international school in China. Thank all has real positive momentum, as does our region and certainly the community. Waterloo is thriving. I think it's doing a remarkable job of capitalizing on the assets it has. I know, Your Worship, that you're increasingly hoping to create a gateway, an entryway focused around post-secondary education. I must say that it is gratifying after 10 years to see the kinds of change that have taken place. They've been all positive. It's been quite wonderful. I'm grateful also that Tim Anderson has been board connection between our city and the university and our international partners, I think, are all vitally important for all of us to thrive. So thank you for recognizing my contributions as I step out. I know that the university will continue to be quite to help out as I can going forward. So thank you all very, very much. Much appreciated.
I know, Max, you appreciate as a biologist that all species contribute to a healthy ecosystem, no matter which role they play in it, and we appreciate the effort that both you and Lynn are going to continue to play in our community in whatever role best suits your time, talent, and desire to get some free time away from the university every now and then. Certainly you've lived a life of leadership and purpose, and we appreciate it very much here, as I know our colleagues in Kitchener and in Brantford would as well. So thank you for being here, and I'll say as well to Dr. Peng, who's with us today in opening international schools and is having such great ties with Wilfrid Laurier, as so many of your compatriots in China are doing with many universities in this country, including ours in this community. We very much appreciate the contribution the future presence here to help us honor Dr. Blau. With that, I should remind you as well of a Canadian tradition, which is that when your presentations are done, you are free to be able to leave our chambers and not stay for the whole meeting if you do want to. I know that's not the way it is everywhere, but we're used to it here, and we take no offense if you choose to go on with your day as we continue to go on with ours.
We appreciate that tradition very much.
So thank you very much. And as they exit, next up on our agenda is Mike Maxwell, who has a request for council to hear and consider.
Hard copies if anyone... Actually, you guys all have monitors now. It's been a while since I've been here. Yeah. Okay. Good afternoon, Chair, Your Worship, and members of Council. Mike Maxwell. Approximately 18 years ago, I started with my brother Peter on redevelopments and student housing right here in Waterloo. For the better part of a decade, we helped build some student housing and led to some of the new product that you see before you. After that, condominiums in both Waterloo and Kitchener. During the time we've done this, has grown considerably. While we have attempted to gain interest and gain knowledge of the need for affordable housing over the recent years, only recently have we been approved by the region to provide our first affordable housing project. We have made numerous applications, participated in numerous roundtables, and spoken with people far greater in knowledge and experience than ourselves. But we are happy to say that our first project is going to be here in Waterloo. This is the site, possibly. There we go. This is the site as it currently exists right now. 186 Herb, Pete and I have owned for almost 9 years. Relatively recently, 184, the property on the left, became available. This allowed us to make for a larger, more sensitive property of modest height, while at the same time providing a meaningful contribution to the more than 3,000 names on the waiting list for affordable housing in Waterloo region. Notwithstanding the rendering, this is the project we are proposing. This is a 3-story apartment building containing 26 one-bedroom and 2 3-bedroom units. Allow for increased environmental sustainability and cost sustainability. From a timetable point of view, and I apologize if I'm being too brief, but I'll be doing questions and answers after. From a timeline point of view, affordable housing need is important and urgent. We have owned this site for a number of years. We have worked our way through the planning approvals process with the city. We have achieved minor variance approval, site plan approval in principle. We just as recently as an hour and 15 minutes ago made our building this will commence demolition. July permit issuance, and we are hoping for occupancy in January of 2018. The budget for this building is approximately $5.5 million. This is the referred to as the capital breakdown, and how we are expecting to fund this project. This is the budget that, on the behalf of the province, has been approved by the region. The Region of Waterloo has approved approximately $3.4 million on behalf of the region in SIF funding for the provision of affordable housing. In addition, the Region of Waterloo has provided a grant for the regional development charges. Over many years to the creation of affordable housing. There has already been that commitment has already been demonstrated in this council's generous support of Show's recent project on Herb Street. Today, I ask council to continue its support and leadership and grant the development at 184 Herb relief of the city's development charges. Shown here, it's estimated that's about $185,000. With council's continued leadership, Waterloo will continue to be a community which supports all members of society. Thank you, and if there's any questions, I'd like to answer them.
Thank you for your presentation, Mike. Looking around at council for questions, Mayor Jaworski.
I have a motion when questions are done.
Okay. Would you like to take that first, or questions first? Questions council has for Mike? Councillor Durrell?
Just looking to fill out some more information here then. So when does building begin, or are you sort of in that really preliminary stage, and how does it work exactly?
Absolutely not. We've been working on this building actually for a couple of years in between other developments we've been working on. It was that it would go either way. It was always going to be an apartment building. We were going to do it one way or the other, but our preference was to hold off. Finding that the region would have through region
Is that how does the process work here?
Well, the mayor has a motion in mind, so we could go that way. Any other questions for Mike before we take this around the horseshoe? Thank you very much, Mike. I'll now look to Mayor Jaworski.
Do I need a waiver of notice motion or anything?
No,
like
you're responding to a delegation.
Okay. One, thank you very much for working on this project here, Mike, in Waterloo. I think, as you mentioned, affordable housing is a persistent, continuous issue, many years, 7 years time. Very happy to see that you have a one-bedroom units and also some family units available in that. So, but because we've considered before, I have a motion for exemption. Kitchener and Cambridge address such requests for exemption/waiver, and that staff report back at the July 24th, 2017 council meeting.
I'll look for a seconder for the mayor's motion, Councillor Burke. Anyone else wishing to speak to the mayor's motion? Seeing none, I'll speak briefly. I certainly concur with Mayor's comments and commendation. Certainly, Mike, to you and your team for holding out for what I know all of us feel is necessary in this contribution to making sure we have an equitable community, that everybody has an opportunity to have a safe place to live, and that's not true for far too many folks. I've also heard, Mike, through prior consultations, speak to really a gap in certainty and policy that exists around these matters. So while we won't be able to turn around new policy inside a month, we'll be able to begin perhaps that process through the lens of this project on thinking about getting there. So we have a better and more complete and coherent sense of how we respond to these in the future, which should both help the industry, whether for profit or non for profit, and council and staff plan and manage these. But this is a first step that the mayor is proposing to get us back on this and to think about this a bit more, given the size of the request is certainly helpful.
I have a question about the motion then.
Sure.
Are we putting a timeline on it? When will we expect to
report back in time for July was the
For
end of
July.
for the July council meeting. Yeah, you don't have it. It's hot off the press internally. Yeah, so there's no earlier council date that would be possible for staff to reply back in time for than the July council meeting. So seeing any further questions or comments, council, then all those in favor? Carried. Back for us to the parking lot bylaw and parking permit occupancy fee. I understand Mr. Council have any questions? Parking questions.
object at any time?
We reached out to the bylaw division and they had requested that we build that in. There's been a few occurrences of drones landing on the parkade. So this is just really to build that into the bylaw, so it was kind of an administration opportunity to clean that up. So it's not banning drones, but it's only allowing them with prior consent.
Someone request
it's just a thing around their heads on lands that we own and should be able to control. Any parking related questions that don't fly in for that? And I really wanted to get any discussion on environmental cleanup reserve funds to Emerald Ash Borer Capital in the amount of 69,609. Very precise number. Is that so moving, Councillor Durrell? So moved by Councillor Durrell, seconded by Councillor Burke. Any questions, Council? Seeing none, all those in favor? Go get those trees. Next, an item. And while you're winning some and losing some, Cassandra's losing sleep. That about get it? Yeah. Councillor Durrell?
Oh, as I was reading this report, one of the things that struck me was the amount of time. I know I sit on the Button Factory board, and they often talk about the amount of time it takes to write grants. How much time do you spend doing this? Because I mean, I look at some of the, like one year you knocked out 33 applications. I mean, I can't even imagine what. So, what does that look like for you?
Through Councillor Henry to Councillor Durrell, I would estimate that approximately 30% of my time is spent on grants, but that doesn't include the rest of the organization, because when we have cross-functional teams,
I was on at the Ontario Chambers of Commerce conversation in I asked to be able to secure grant, which is not a sustainable way for us to be able to deal with the infrastructure challenges that we have. And if that's our problem, I can only imagine what tiny township and other organizations that are much smaller than us fare in terms of applying for all of these opportunities. So,
I mean, the one thing I would note is we received 1.8 million. So the ROI of 30% of Cassandra's job is you're doing a really good job. You're earning your pay and then a few other people's as well. So that's well done. That was
this item. Again, for the update and all the work that it takes to say don't receive them when those opportunities are available. We just need additional sources that are far more secure and take less effort to be able to manage to our priorities. Next up, speaking of priorities, Canadian Clay and Glass gallery renovations. Any questions Council has on this item? Councillor Burke?
Waiting for everybody to sit. I noticed in the plan to do this, it means we need to defer a couple of other projects, the library retaining wall and Moses Springer. How long further out are we looking at that, and how do we prioritize that this is more important than those two? Because if the retaining wall falls down, that's a problem.
Yeah, the retaining wall was assessed by staff along with environmental staff, and based on our assessment, it appears the stability of the retaining wall is good at this point. So we are deferring that one for a few more years now.
And Moses Springer?
Sorry. Moses Springer. The Moses Springer, yes. The estimate of the rehab has been re-estimated, and we find that it can be done at a reduced scale.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Sunda and team on this item? If I'll get it on the floor. Councillor Veith moves. Seconder, Councillor Freeman, questions?
I just wanted to ask how I appreciate the audit committee's point around items included in base bid, and that in the future all required project components be included in the base bid of the project. How can we ensure that that recommendation will be put forward?
I'll look over to Keshwar maybe to, or someone else to take that one up, or should I look down to Sunda? Sunda, you ready for that one? Sure.
Yeah. Every time I think that the all prices or that's the one I think that was just, and we will the language, Tracy and the purchasing division, and we talked, and we will ensure the language is clear so that the base price will include all the essential items.
Keshwar?
Through you, Chair Henry, if I could add to it also, this was a complex project in terms of how the specialized material that was needed, the specialized windows that were needed, and to tweak the scope of the project to understand what stays in the base bid and what becomes optional. So this is certainly a lesson learned and something that we will revisit with the other project managers that oversee these kind of projects.
I think this certainly highlights value of our audit committee's eyes as another pair of eyes, so that we can make sure that we are continually improving on these processes. So good on you for raising their question on this, Councillor Durrell. I had it on the floor. Any other questions, Council? Seeing none, all those in favour? Carried. Next up, we have required generator updates, so don't go anywhere, two of you. Any questions on this, council? Seeing none, I'll look for a mover and seconder. Moved by Mayor Jaworski, seconded by Councillor Burke. All those in favor then of that? Carried. And now on to year-end financial information. First up, the financial dashboard. Heidi, I think you have a brief presentation for us.
Hi, good afternoon. Staff presented financial statements and operating results to this council in May. We're not in some financial information. This is relating to the financial dashboard. This has been posted on the city website since 2013, so this is now its and the intent is really to have compare them to target where possible, and really the purpose is to provide additional transparency and comparability on some of the financial information that council sees from staff. The financial dashboard has been categorized into four what we call pillars, those being financial position, economic growth, reserves and asset condition, debt, and those measures are all in the dashboard. There's about 18 measures in total. Each of the measures is rated. We have three different levels of rating. Positive basically means the measure is within target and it indicates the state of course. Yellow basically means caution, which means the multi-year trend is deteriorating. And finally, negative means that the measure is below target for several consecutive years and it requires continuation of previous attention or that corrective action is now necessary. So I just wanted to highlight the results for 2016. The first pillar is financial position. And basically, the overall financial position of the city is improving and we're able to meet our debt obligations. As indicated to council in May, the annual surplus to budget is very low, which requires monitoring of financial results. The challenge is that the city, like all municipalities, currently does not budget for amortization. And once you account for amortization, this impacts the surplus ratio. And therefore, the operating surplus to budget ends up being an operating deficit once amortization is accounted for. And the corrective action for this is there's a long-term asset management plan and a long-term financial plan that staff is currently working on. And at the bottom of the slide, we just tried to give you a quick graphic representation of the financial dashboard for example, financial position in this case. There is 9 measures, and 7 of those are positive, and 2 of them are red, means that corrective action is necessary. The second pillar is economic growth. The good news is that the city has experienced steady overall economic growth as measured by assessment. And the challenge is, while we've had lots of residential growth, such as, for example, multi-residential construction along the LRT line, the non-residential growth hasn't been keeping up at the same rate. That's basically assessment from industrial and commercial sector. And staff under council's direction has developed economic development strategies which are focusing on those areas. And out of the 3 measures, 1 of them is green with positive and 2 of them are cautionary. Our third pillar is reserves and asset conditions. And as we indicated to council in May, reserve levels, while they were building for a number of years, have been declining over the last couple of years as we are spending more on asset management priorities. And additionally, in 2016, there was the creation of an industrial land reserve. This is a reserve that will be funded from future land sales. Basically, more investment is needed in reserves to fund aging assets. And assets are amortizing more quickly than your replacement assets are being created. Again, the corrective action is that the long-term asset management plan, long-term financial plan, is currently something that staff are working on. And out of the 8 measures for reserves and asset condition, 4 of them are positive, 2 are cautionary, and 2 are negative. And the final item is debt. Again, there's a good news story that there's a positive trend in the per capita debt, which means the per capita debt has been decreasing for the last 8 or 9 years. There was a bit of a jump in debt in 2014, but that was because of development charge funded debt. That wasn't tax funded debt. And the corrective action for this is that the city has exercised prudent judgment on new debt issuance for quite a number of years now, as reflected in the 2016 10-year capital budget. Out of the 5 measures for debt, 2 are green, positive, 1 is cautionary, and 2 are negative. So just to summarize this, basically the financial dashboard was developed by staff to provide an additional level of transparency and comparability to council and the public in terms of where the city falls in the financial position of the city. And I also wanted to highlight that we also have a performance dashboard that is on the city website, has a number of non-financial measures, which is also available. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much, Heidi, for the overview. This has certainly been a number of years that we've been running this dashboard, and we've been iterative in terms of updating it and learning from it and taking it back as we council for.
Commend you on the fact that anybody can understand where we are financially with the city of Waterloo. So
Yeah.
job accomplished, and I think that this is a great. I mean, as we move forward, it makes people's financial understanding of where we are. I've had so many times where people have called me or emailed me, and they're like, "Wow, the Rim Park debt is totally," and you're like, "Well, wait a minute here."
Yeah.
Check it out. You get sort of those offhanded comments about our financial situation. Well, the fact is, as you said, we're in great shape, and I commend our CFO and her entire team. You're doing a wonderful job. So thank you.
Thank you.
Through your Chair, Henry, that it is our role to provide the information to Council, but it is the decision-making that Council does that has put us on a steady path. So our role is to provide the information and the choices. The decision-making is with Council. I would reiterate that. I often say I only hold the purse strings, but it is Council that makes the decision. So kudos to Council for that, listening to the advice that we give you. So back to you.
Yeah.
When we don't like it.
Yeah, I think it's certainly really critical, given, Councillor Durrell, you raised quite rightly the number one comment that many people usually make without further information about finance. It's a focus on debt, and broadly the debt story has been good because councils, not just this one, but prior councils, have kept that at the forefront of their mind even before we had a dashboard, that we needed to be prudent and thoughtful in how we were managing the public purse. And that's what we. But I think the other piece that I take from Heidi's presentation year after year is also the management infrastructure, which doesn't get younger with age. It only, like all of us, gets older, and we're not yet in the place that we need to be able to fully refab that, to be able to maintain it to a level that I think we've all come to expect over time. And that's why Council has funded the asset management plan and program. We'll be hearing more about those efforts next week with more plaudits and kudos, I understand. Cam will tell us the good news next week. I think that we've that we've done in those plannings, but the long-term financial plan that we've started to undertake as well will help us really integrate that into our long-term finances and come out on the other end where it's more than just the debt story that's a good story, where we can start to tell a better story about where we're going on infrastructure. So still challenging decisions ahead, but this is good to keep our awareness on the right things as we hear the needs of the community and try to figure out how to balance all of that with what we can afford and what we can manage. So if there's nothing further for Heidi on this report, then I will ask Felipe to come forward on the next report. And what do the engineering team folks do all day? I think this is a report that does a good job answering both of those questions.
Good afternoon. So to continue on with the Finance Fund, we have another report. This is a new process, so I'm going to have a very brief at the end. So Council already receives year-end reporting from an operating perspective as part of the financial statements and our annual reporting that Paul and his group do. And you also often see updates for capital projects on a one-off basis in Council, but this is an effort that we've created as a new process to elevate the financial information that comes to Council in an attempt to really consolidate all of the capital works in progress into one report at a fairly high level. And we've done this by leveraging our existing internal process and then trying to put our minds together as to what would be helpful for Council. I would like to acknowledge the work of Julie Coppicer and of Kim Reger, who isn't here today, as well as all of the financial planning team, staff, and our colleagues in all of the divisions. Our projects really span so many different areas, and so I would like to thank everyone for all of their efforts. As I mentioned, the purpose of this report really is to give Council sort of a macro view, but a comprehensive one. So we will be asking if you can provide us with your feedback later on to help us inform our next report. Capital projects are an important investment, of course, as you know, in our community that have a really long-lasting impact to our citizens. So here are some very few examples of the 327 active projects that we had in 2016. Some of them may be near and dear to your heart. And they cross various paths on the spectrum. So you have from book collection to our multi-use trail, the Waterloo spur line, pumping station upgrades, and of course lots of roadworks that have happened in 2016 as well. In 2014, there were 44 projects that were closed or reassigned and that came in under budget or on budget and reallocated per Council's approved credit balance policy. At the end of the year, there were 85% of our capital projects were on track and 15% that had a yield status. A yield status indicates that the project either had budget or timing related impacts as far as the schedule goes. The single largest project with the yield status in December was a service center rehabilitation, and this is in the Council report. There were unforeseen items such as the excavation of contaminated material and project improvement items, such as the replacement of the exterior siding in our heated vehicle storage building, which delayed some of the progress. But from that time, from December to now, those items are now on track. The project from a schedule perspective is on track, and we are continuing to work through any minor budget implications that may be there. So that will be something that comes forward to Council when we are at that point. Since December, 98% of the yield status projects have been completed and are now identified as being on track. So it's important to note this is at a point in time. We are taking a historical view to look back at what happened in the previous year and report on that to Council. The majority of the work that the city did last year can be attributed to infrastructure renewal. And as the last conversation indicated, certainly we have more work to do there, but that it is very much a focus of the City of Waterloo to take care of our existing assets as best we can. So facilities and roads actually comprised 64% of our total capital expenditures last year, those two themes in particular. And as the city continues to deliver on hundreds of capital projects that touch the citizens directly, such as park expansions and road rehabilitation, trail works, pumping station upgrades, and so many more, this annual report is intended to give council a quick snapshot of those projects. Looking forward to the 10-year capital budget and capital forecast, it's a plan to deliver 351 projects with a total value of $452 million. And some of those include Silver Lake, implementing the Uptown CIP, the LED street light change-out work, Maple Hill rehabilitation, Creek rehabilitation, the Northdale Community Master Plan implementation. We have an aerial truck that's coming on board, Alexander and Mary Allen Park, Waterloo Park Square, Waterloo Public Square water feature, Carnegie Library, and so many more. But certainly you can appreciate the range of projects that our staff are working on and with our consultants. So with that, we want to point out that this is our first attempt at this report, and with so much data on so many of these projects, it is important and to find out what it is that you would find of value in this report going forward so that we can meet your needs. So we look forward to answering any questions that you may have and also receiving your feedback so that we can incorporate that into future reports.
And I know, Philippa, that this report that's before us today had managed to, in quick turnaround, incorporate some of Audit Committee's responses to those same questions. To manage that. Council, questions, comments? Councillor Duro?
Yeah, I thought this was a great report. I love this budget, obviously, because there's a lot going on in Uptown. One of the things that would be helpful, and right, it's the best. So this is my kind of budget. So one of the things that I was interested in, and I don't want to create extra work because that sucks, but aligning it with the strat plan. So, for example, the Community Climate Action Plan and some of the community change assessment, I mean, that really falls under the pillars of our strategic plan. And I think for us, it's that extra chat. We're moving in the right direction. We're moving towards the strategic plan that we want to see of the city. I mean, I think many of us could kind of click off what they are in our pillars, but it would be nice to see that alignment, I think. That's just one of the things I was coming up with.
Through you, Chair Henry, and that's a great talk. I think where we could maybe add more value is in the actual analysis in the report by pointing that out. In the capital placemats, we've identified the strategic pillars associated with the projects. So hopefully that gives council some sense for, what those projects are in relation to our strategic plan. So they are there, but we could, in that.
Sorry, where did you say they were?
In
the mappy map.
In the actual, yes.
Yeah, in this part.
It's like the fourth column, I think.
Yeah.
From the right, from the left.
Oh yeah, that's another thing I love to see is the on time and within budget. That was really nice to see over and over again.
It is really, by and large, the norm. I think that's the other thing I appreciated about being able to flip through the placemat is really seeing the broad range of projects, particularly at the high level, the big ones, and how routinely we're managing them on time, we're managing them within budget, and on those ones that we haven't, the reasons are well articulated, not just in the report but in there, and they're usually items that are unexpected and beyond our control, and on occasion they're because there are some additional. The one thing that I know said about roads is one makes sense to do the HVAC there rather than the HVAC somewhere else if you're already working on the building, that there's some efficiencies we gain from doing some of those. Other comments or questions? Councillor Burke and Mayor Jaworski.
One thing, I think it's really interesting because people have that tendency to believe, well, if the government's building, it's got to be over budget and it's got to be late. And obviously, this shows that's not the case. But I'm just wondering, because it's a very good report, which the vast majority of normal human beings would not work through. And I'm just wondering if there's a way similar to our financial dashboard that we can translate that over to our digital space in a way that people can easily see, here's what's been done, here's what's been done on time. Because it seems to me like it's addressing one of those big concerns people have with all levels of government. And it's nice to be able to get that information out in as unbiased a way as possible, of course. And just to give people as I mentioned, this is where your money goes. And this is how it goes there. I think to be able to put that up on our website and other places would be valuable for the people who do care about that.
I see mostly, pens taking things down and acknowledging. Right.
Yes, so we will certainly, I think that's a great idea, and we will look at, what's the most user-friendly way to communicate that information on our website, and point well taken.
Just while I'm on a bit of a roll, I think it would be awesome if you could go onto the City of Waterloo website and click your ward and broken down to that level. I think that would be something that would be incredibly valuable for most people if they know what ward they live in, which I realize is a problem at times, but we got to start somewhere, right? So I think that'd be an interesting thing to explore.
Mayor?
It is interesting. When we did the tree giveaway, we asked people to say, what ward are you in? They go, I don't know. They didn't know I had a ward. So, yeah, that might be more difficult, but certainly geographically they'd be able to pick it up. And I was in tune with what Councillor Burke said on communication. I think even the fact that the staff deal with this on the basis and look at certain things and see Colonial Creek pump station upgrade, we kind of know what that is. For Joe Citizen probably doesn't know what that is. So being able to convert this into plain language or a solid understanding of what people might be interested in, certainly the top projects in that, and as Councillor Durrell mentioned, the strategic plan fit. Decision making. So I would say the two lenses I would see this being used for is for communication and understanding of where we are, but also for decision making. How might this fit into the preparation of, say, the next 10-year capital budget? Or is it more of a reporting as we're in a council term, or is it useful as well in preparing for the 10-year capital plan? And I'll broaden that. I'll just say, what sort of decision making, how can we reference these placemats for decision making in the future? How might you see us using them?
Through you, Chair Henry. I think internally, we have been really doing what we needed to do in order to inform council during the budget process as to how much money is available for what. But I think that leading into that budget process, you will have greater line of sight as to where projects are headed. I would see it more as information sharing as opposed to new information that you can necessarily make decisions on. It's more kind of looking a little bit backwards to say, okay, we have a sense for how last year was. Let's take that and put it into but I would say it's really information to help your decision making, but really not new information, just perhaps packaged up in a way that you don't have to read 25 reports perhaps to get the same understanding. You can hopefully get it all in one spot. But I hope it complements what else is there so that come capital budget time, you feel a little bit more informed in general about where we're headed with our projects financially.
Okay, and then effort. Obviously, probably a lot of effort to do this the first time around. What might be in future times. Like, so how much clarity do you need from us in terms of what this report might look like for next year? Or once it's been done once, you just press a button and magic occurs.
That's simple.
Through you, Chair Henry. I think as somebody who worked on the report, what I would be looking for would be if there's information that you're not seeing, that you would like to be seeing, that could be incorporating. Is it at the right level of detail? Is it too detailed? That type of feedback would be very helpful.
Okay.
And I've said that, so we'll go over to the right.
Henry, in terms of the effort, this was certainly a coordinated effort with all the divisions. So much though Julie led the charge on it, this was working with the engineering folks, as Councillor Henry mentioned. It explains what the engineering folks have been doing all year. So it's really getting all the input from all the project managers. So it's certainly a collaborative effort. I think a fair number of hours are put into it, but I think it's important report that council needs to get, so you have a line of sight on, the $400 million that we spend in 10 years. What is it being spent on? What's the status of the project? So this, in our mind, in our professional judgment, was an important piece to go forward. In terms of the other point that you raised, this is the first report, and as Councillor Burke would mention that he would like to see it on the website, that would be certainly something that we will try to grow towards. This is the first step, I would say, in terms of just putting this report forward. So definitely with the existing resources, we'll see what we can do. We'll work with communication to see how we can even simplify it further. This is really taking, I think, a couple of hundred projects and then synthesizing it into 10, 12 different placemats that give that aggregate information as well as detail for the higher dollar value projects. So this is certainly a work in progress, and a big credit goes to really the interdepartmental team that contributed the status, the comments, the information, and to audit committee that gave us some valuable insight also in producing this. So how this would be used, we use this information, we've had the detail anyways in finance when the capital budgets are done. Typically the financial analysts would look at the projects that are currently holding a lot of dollars and are not necessarily proceeding and saying, do you really want to budget for X number of projects in the following year? So we ask those questions anyways. So that's how the budget is done. This would be another oversight that council would have. So typically we intend to get this report with the other year-end reports around May. If you miss the May, it would be June. So it would be around May, June. The budgets would be coming around November, December of every year. So council will have the opportunity to pull this dollars in community improvement. Do you really want to put in Y dollars in community improvement? This will allow council now to connect the dots on it too. So that was our intention and goal in facilitating the decision making for council.
Councillor Freeman.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Henry. In terms of answering the question that you asked, is there enough information? Could more information be added? That kind of thing. I think that if this were a document that I wanted to send a link to my citizens over, it would be really helpful to just drop the like the project codes that we use here internally, and then in terms of replacing that project number, I think I might put something like citywide, uptown, northeast ward, something like that, something that brought it closer to where people live. And then the only thing that I would like to get a better sense of is whether or not a project is within what the word I'm looking for, like whether or not the contingency was spent. So I'm trying to get a sense of, did it come in under budget without having to dip into the contingency, or was a contingency fund used as well? Like, so for me, but I think that's more me as a councillor that I would like. I don't think that's necessarily helpful to the broader citizenry, because obviously the budget included the contingency element. But me, I would just like to know how close we came to that. And and again, just from a council perspective, if we did have to spend all the contingency, there might be an obvious reason. We encountered environmental conditions that were unknown, or whatever that looks like. But that would be helpful. But I do think that people are interested to know about how capital investment is happening in the city. where the priority areas are within the city and how it is that we're tackling those. For the citizens that live near the pumping station on Colonial Creek, I'll tell you, that is a very real project to them. And it's been a powerful impact to their everyday lives over the last 2 years. And in a tough way, we have to know that actually is more of a citywide project for all to be developed in and around Rim Park, and to build capacity for additional land up around Rim Park or whatever. So I just think, you know, we've done that in the Uptown where we've upsized capital infrastructure in an effort to unlock developable land and increase growth. And I think a lot of folks don't really understand that that is the intent of that broader impact. So it feels like it's only local, but it's actually a citywide impact. I don't know whether that makes sense. And in terms of reporting, I will say that I loved the format of the active transportation or the active Waterloo report and just how readable that was. And I don't know whether this type of reporting is something that does facilitate some kind of partnership with the university to ask, I don't know, for a fourth year project course or something like that in civil engineering or in planning, to develop some kind of framework around this reporting that brings it to a level that is readable by the broader citizenry. But it's just a suggestion. I mean, it's always nice to get stuff into an application format or an online format, but if it's going to be a PDF, then how readable do we make that?
Yeah. Well, and there may be some utility as, you know, to sort of combine your feedback and Councillor Burke's feedback, that maybe a page out of the community yearbook or those kinds of annual reporting. Because while Colonial Creek Pumping Station is very important to the people around it and is very important to the city at large, it's that kind of infrastructure people don't see. But the roll-up of generally things are going, you know, well, except in these cases and at a very top level, maybe, you know, you get the 85% of the public interest captured that way. Anyways, good feedback, I think, for staff as they're thinking about how to move forward. Anything else, Council, on this? I want to follow up on, you know, one of the mayor's questions that was really answered by finance in terms of how this can be used for decision making of council or how staff find it useful. But I'd like to turn, you know, Tim, feel free to delegate as is your want, but from an operational perspective, from a project management perspective for the ones leading projects rather than the funding, you know, managers on the finance side, how do you see how this you know, report for staff in the other departments and divisions outside of finance?
Through you, Chair Henry, great question. Internally, I think there's a lot of value in the report, not only to what Philippa spoke of externally, but certainly for us, workload management and identifying those peaks and valleys in the capital program. There's an enormous amount of work happening here. As you can see, approximately 45 million a year is a significant amount, and our processes around that, the staff, whether it's internally driven or externally with consultants, I think those are some of the key decision points that this helps us with. I think the buckets of funding and where they're allocated across the departments, of course, is always a challenge at budget time, and certainly from a high level, from where I sit, it's a debate that we have oftentimes, and I think it certainly sets illumination on that front as well. As we move more and more into asset management and the go-forward thinking around where the resources are most optimized, again, a reflection of where we've been as we look to the future, I think this report will help us greatly in that regard as well. And of course, always monitoring at a high level where we are on budget, on time, or where there's some challenges, and understanding those really helps us to unpack where the challenges might be internally and redirect resources accordingly. And I'll pass it to Mr. Rapp or Keshwart to add comments?
Certainly. Through Chair Henry to all council, what this exercise has done for us, at least within IPPW, is it has accurately portrayed a few things that we knew anecdotally about our processes of how we would budget, certain delays that we would come across, of approvals that we have to go through that as a constructor of infrastructure. So, as I said, this exercise has defined some of those things that will help us to multi-year budget projects of significance, because on average, we didn't really know it for certain, but most of our capital projects last about 3 years. We probably would have guessed 1, 2, but when you actually look at it, they last 3 years. So this will help us definitely internally.
No, Councillor.
Through you, Chair Henry, I think one of the points that I would say is that rather than anecdotal information, now we're giving very factual information. So once we start the requirements and we come up with a long-term financial plan, there will be a change into the capital projects that we come forward with. If you're going to make a dent in the infrastructure deficit, we have to take on more capital projects. Funding aside, we just need to take on more capital projects. So realistically, this will be the fact that we will count to say $10 million or $15 million more in capital projects every year, then this is the resource impact that it is going to be. So it is going to be fact-based information that Council will have to consider. So this is how we will be connecting the dots from a workload and from addressing the challenges that we're bringing forward through the dashboard and through this report.
And certainly that's helpful color to reports that we'll see in the future. Certainly the top line, there's lots of good information here, but the top line for me is that staff managed 327 active projects in 2016. That's a big number, and that's a lot to sort of manage and understand the moving parts individually for staff that deal with that, for managers and directors overseeing those staff, but then at the higher level for OLT and CMT to just see and understand the balance as we continually do budgeting exercise and cash flow exercises to make sure all of this works in the reserve balances and budget and right where it's going in. And so the capacity question is one that I do hope we get some good insight from this in future reports as we ramp up infrastructure spending to where it needs to be over the long term with input from the community on what that's going to mean. Okay, if there's nothing further on this, then I'll keep moving. Consideration of notion of motion. Given our previous meeting, we have none. Notice of motion, I see none. Communications and correspondence, we have none, at least in this meeting this afternoon. Regional information and correspondence, we have none. Unfinished business, Council, we shouldn't have any. New business, we should have. Councillor Freeman.
Through your Chair, Henry, I just wanted to let people know that on July the 9th, the Waterloo Mennonite Brethren Church is having a community barbecue, and I'm planning to distribute the 150 trees that are available for my ward at that event, so it has an opportunity to help spread the word. That would be great. So just say time that I had at the service center opening last weekend. I know that everyone worked so incredibly hard, and I although I had to leave for a family wedding, I had a really lovely time.
It was great to see citizens engaging with our staff, our fantastic staff, but also hung out for a while with Tim Wolf in the tree giveaway area, and what I appreciated most from citizens coming in is they engaged not with the idea of having a tree, but of making sure the tree was the right fit for their lot, and they were very considerate. Our citizens are very knowledgeable about their trees and their yards, and they were well directed to, I think, the right fit for them. So we've got a great legacy that we're building and growing here in Waterloo.
And in that same vein, Open Streets was yesterday, and although we had tough weather, some people still came out. And the Bright On campaign that we're running this month for Bike Month has been highly successful. We ran out of lights when we did it at the community barbecue at the church, and we're going to repeat it in July, even though it's not bike month. So if you have people that need their bikes HTA compliant, send them to the community barbecue on July the 9th. They can get a treat and they can get bike lights.
That's a good deal. Anything else, Council, under other business? Any questions, Council? Any motion for adjournment, Council? Councillor Freeman, Councillor Veith, all those in favor? Carried. We stand adjourned until 6:30 when the mayor switches seats.